WJR.
With that, obviously, that's one of the things that will have to be dealt with, but it won't be our responsibility to solve that on the island. We're not making a promise that we're going to come back with the answer.
But discussions around part-time legislature or dealing with term limits, I do think impacted. I think, in all fairness, I think these are good people that are in Lansing, but we had individuals in the House and the Senate and through the whole administration that have not dealt with issues like this and are not seasoned politicians. And I think that's what made it so very, very difficult. And so I think everybody realizes we have to deal with the subject of term limits, whether it's revising that or looking at a part-time legislature. And that will be one of the discussions. I was just talking to Joe Schwartz today. He is one of the individuals that will be sitting on that panel. And it should be a fun panel.
How does help me understand the part-time legislature? How does that help?
Well, actually, the majority of the states have a part-time legislature.
Right.
In South Carolina, where I spent 4 years, it's one of its main purposes, David, was to pass the budget each year. And these were individuals who did something else to make a living. They didn't make it going to Columbia a couple months out of the year. And so I think when you get a part-time legislature, you really have the ability to get people that have other jobs that can afford to maybe go there for 3 or 4 months and focus on state government. And you don't get a government making up laws all year long that don't make any sense, really. I mean, most of what it gets done never gets passed anyhow.
That was I knew that. I want to make sure that the listeners, as they come and try to understand what comes off the island in terms of recommendations, why. I mean, I think educating folks around this issue is going to be a challenge.
It's going to be very, very important. And the problem with term limits is we never realized it when we put it in place, but you don't have individuals who have an opportunity to really learn the job, and suddenly they're thrust into leadership.
Staff is there that knows how to do things because they keep the jobs. You know, the support staff become the experts, and you have to depend on your support staff, the secretaries, assistants, and all that because they've been there. But I've never liked term limits. I'm not like Monday morning quarterbacking and saying, well, yeah, it's easy to say that now, Paul. My simple reason for being against term limits from the beginning was that we are limiting the people that we can vote for. Meaning, why would we want to take away the opportunity to keep someone in position that we think was great? Why in the world would we do that? And I'll tell you why. Because we've fallen into the habit across the board of dumbing down or going to the lowest common denominator and making our rules and regulations for them. We did this because people didn't study or pay attention. They just went into the booth, and because the name had been there and they were familiar with it, they voted for the person again. But that meant we then made a rule to cover for those people.
Right.
It's like when I go into the pharmacy and I have 4 people in the house with 4 different illnesses for a cold, and I go in and I start getting these 4 different, they got 500 different medicines to choose from, and I'm doing all these things, and I take them up to the counter, and they go, you can only buy 2 at once. I go, what are you talking about? Well, there's a state law now, or federal law, or whatever law, you can only buy 2. And I went, what you mean I buy these 2, I got to go out, I come back in, I can buy 2 more? Yes. It's because people were taking these drugs and making meth. And so we had a law that took regular law-abiding citizens and inconvenienced us because of a few slugs that were making illicit, illegal drugs. But my point is, we did the same thing. We're doing it everywhere. We're dumbing down. We're going to that lowest common denominator. We're servicing those people, and I don't think we need to service those people. And the same thing with term limits. It was, well, once they got in, they had an advantage, and they keep staying in because their name was familiar, because people don't really pay attention, but if they see the name, they go for it. Oh, my gosh, What are you going to? So you're going to pretend that nobody's paying attention politically? Therefore, we should make it so that we limit the number of people or the people that we can choose for office? Never made sense to me.
The challenge with that is, too, all the decisions become short-term focused. We're not making any long-term decisions because the people who are there are making decisions for their, whether it's a 2, 4, 6, or 8 year potential term.
Yeah, but then my partner,
we're making bad decisions.
My partner David, that is the case in business across the board. We got a lot of CEOs that know that their average lifespan is 18 to 36 months. Yeah. And so they're going to do things that, if you walk into a boardroom and say, I got a plan. Now, these first 3 years, we're not going to do well. But boy, year 9, 10, and 11, we're going to be doing fabulously well. They fire the guy. I mean, you say, what, are you kidding me? We got to report to Wall Street next quarter. Everything is short term. Everything is short term.
But
now.
If you want to liken it to the U.S. level, just think about the fact that if you had term limits, Congressman Dingell wouldn't be there. Congressman Nolenberg wouldn't be there. Look at the seniority. Look at the warriors that have been there for the auto industry, for our borders issues. Yeah. We wouldn't have any of that if we had a state situation at the federal level. So, Andy Dillon and Mike Bishop are good people. I think they work hard. They try hard. I think the load we dumped on them was huge.
And no experience, as you pointed out, and then all of a sudden you're a leader.
And they'd be the first to tell you that.
They would, yeah.
Well, I've just never. I hope we do away with term limits, and people should pay attention to the process and vote for people that do a good job and vote out people who don't do a good job.
And I think that's going to be one of the big discussions up at Mackinac. I should also add that the agenda, if you go through it, it's really aligned with all the 1D policies, so we want to keep that alive. Edsel Ford is going to be giving his first report card on activities relative to those policy decisions. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conference this year. Nardelli is certainly an interesting individual, and he's one of our keynoters.
Excellent.
Talk a little bit, if you can, Dick, about the partnership that Chamber has with Renaissance and how that came about. Was that an offspring of last year's policy conference? Some of it was hatched there, if you will.
Yeah, in life, nothing is probably an exact moment when something starts. But the 1D initiative. Coming together for Mackinac, the fact that the business community understood that the agendas need to be better coordinated drove us to create a very strong partnership. And it so happens then that when you get to 1D, and one of the priorities is economic prosperity, the work of Detroit Regional Chamber and Detroit Renaissance are very, very aligned in that regard. So when you get to Mackinac and you hear Edsel report, you're going to find the most activity under that economic prosperity because that's where our organizations have been working every day.
I'm wondering, as I look at this, the conference agenda looks great. You always tweak it. You always make it better. It's amazing in these 28 years of existence. What I've always been impressed by in the 12 or 13 years I've been going, is that you do a great follow-up, Dick. Your people and you do a great follow-up, and you really do have these meetings and questionnaires you want people to fill out where they rate things and they talk about what can be done to improve it, and you really pay attention to it and follow that. And I think that shows.